All right, so not too long ago, I made a video about the current card app, right? And basically, it's a debit card for kids and teenagers. And the reason I actually built something like this because there was only really one competitor out there, and it was called Greenlight, right? And I haven't done a review on that. I'm gonna say that for another video. But basically, the current card stepped in and kind of filled in that market and actually started competing, right? Ads everywhere, people asking a bunch of questions. So when I made the video, a lot of you guys actually commented and told me, Tommy, what's a better alternative to this? Because if you guys remember in that first video that I made, I didn't recommend it because the customer service sucked, the premium features weren't really premium, and you couldn't really transfer the money ASAP unless you had the money already inside the app, right? And that was a big concern with a lot of parents because they wanted to make sure their kids had access to the money immediately in case they were on trips or in case they needed money for an emergency, like whatever it was, right? So the alternative to that was actually the Greenlight app. I haven't made a video about that, but I will make a video about that very soon. Now, one parent did ask me in the comments down below, did tell me, Tommy, well, what do you think is a good alternative to all this, right? So I started thinking and I started doing some really deep research, okay? And what I found out was this, right? The average kid, the average bank out there only lets like kids have a bank account, a debit card, like once they turn 13, right? And their parents have to basically co-sign for this, right? So you want to kind of teach your kids like probably responsibility at an earlier age, and I get why you would want to do that. And then for you to even get an investment account for a kid, they need to be like between 18 to 21 to even open up an investment account and actually invest into mutual funds, right? So that's out the window, right? Because you can't really like teach the kids any habits if they're already 18, they already learned what they were going to learn, right? And then 13 is kind of like a little older, so you kind of want to start earlier and earlier, right? So I did some research and I actually found out a way that you can actually save money for your kid and actually teach them exactly how to have respect for money, actually earn money and have to and actually like do chores and earn money. But the catch is that by the time they turn 18, they're gonna have over $100,000 already saved up. Now, you're probably asking me, Tommy, how is this possible? Okay, and honestly, when I discovered this, I wish my parents would have probably done the same. Now, here's the deal, right? There have been some studies actually written about this, right? I know that a lot of parents out there are saying like, Tommy, it's a digital world, so you want the kids to actually use debit cards and stuff like that. But in reality, that's not the best thing to do because when kids use debit cards, even when adults use debit cards, you see that there's studies done on this, right? They spend 18% more money because there's not really a big transaction actually taking place. For example, when I walk into a McDonald's, right? And this is an example that Dave Ramsey actually used, right? You don't know who Dave Ramsey is? He's one of the biggest gurus here on YouTube that does like a lot of finance work, right? He basically said this, okay? When somebody walks into a McDonald's, for example, and they have a card, right? They say like, well, I want this, I want that, I want this. Like, here's my card. They swipe the card, they give you back the card, and they give you also the burgers or whatever you bought, right? Right then and there, there's this primitive thing that took place, right? It's a trade. But in reality, you received your card and you received the burger also. So in your mind, in your primitive mind, because this is human biology, you didn't really see any exchange actually take place. That's why people are more likely to spend more money with plastic debit cards, okay? But if you use cash, then you'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm spending $20 and that's leaving my hand. I don't really want to do that. And that's the entire thing I'm actually trying to tell you. So what I recommend is this, right? Before your child actually gets to 13, I recommend you just do cash, okay? You did something, here's the cash for it. That's great. That's good. Now, for every single other person on this video is probably going to say, Tommy, it's not a good idea to have kids do a chore and then give them money because when you do that, you recreate this habitual employment like mentality, right? And in reality, for a lot of parents out there, let me tell you something, right? It's not really a big deal. And the reason is because when you create this entire thing, right? First of all, you do need to teach your kids like, patience. Like for example, if they do something, you shouldn't hear like, oh my gosh, you didn't pay me for this, I'm not doing it. You shouldn't hear that from a kid. You should probably just do like a weekly allowance and that's about it. And then you just ask them to do chores or whatever. But it should never be like, oh, you didn't pay me for this, so I'm not doing that. Like you don't want to raise kids like that. But the reason I'm saying that it's not a big deal if they develop like this entire like employment thing, well, not really develop employment because you do want them to become financially free in the future, is because 1 in 5 millionaires in America, like they have a regular 9 to 5 job, right? And the thing that separates them from all the other employees is the financial IQ and the financial information that their parents most likely instilled in them because the school system doesn't really teach them anything about this. Okay, so here's my idea, right? We all know that the average kid, right, when they're born costs around $10,000 to actually take care of every single year, right? So I did some math and I actually found out that if you're giving your kid, right, an allowance from the time that they're born, Tommy, how can you teach a kid anything if they're just born and they can't spend any money? That's not the point I'm making, okay? Because you want to prepare a fund for your kids so by the time they go to college, they have enough money. So if they do want to go to college, they can just go to college and pay for it themselves. Or if they don't want to go to college, they can do whatever they want, basically, okay? And not do whatever they want, but actually start working towards whatever they want, okay? And not just graduate with a whole bunch of student loan debt, right? So for example, if you're spending $10,000 on a kid every single year, right, and most of the stuff is like probably like buying clothes, buying a lot of stuff that it's not really the necessities. Well, if you do this, right, well, what actually happens if you save 24% of that money, which adds up to be like around $2,400 a year, if you save that up every single year for about 18 years until that child turns 18, they will have about $106,000 saved up in an investment account. Now, you're probably telling me, Tommy, how am I supposed to do that if I can't open up a bank account in their name and I can't even open up an investment account in their name, right? Well, you open it up as a parent, like kind of like on their behalf, and if anything happens to you, then you kind of like sign in your will, basically like, I want this to be for this kid, I want this to be for the other kid, okay? And that's basically what I'm saying. Now, here's another strategy, okay? Because a lot of people out there, what they do is this, right? I get the entire debit card thing. If you still want to go around with it and you kind of want to teach your kids responsibility in a whole different way, and you don't believe in like, you know, human behavior, then if you want to get the plastic, I recommend you get Greenlight. I will be making a very descriptive video on that app later, or that card later. But here's my thing, right? If you do that, I want you guys to make sure, right, because the Greenlight app has like this entire feature where like you can set the APR for the savings accounts. What that means is that, well, if you get this kid, right, for example, you pay him $50 every single week, and you get him to save like around 20% of that money and you put it into the savings accounts, well, you can choose the APR for that savings accounts, and you actually pay it at the end of the year on a monthly basis. So for example, if you want to say like, oh my gosh, if you save like every single month, you actually get 10% of your money back, which is not realistic, and you don't want to have kids growing up thinking that that's how the world works, but you can prospectively actually do that. So you can set up to 10%, whatever, and then every single month, like for example, if they saved $100, they get $10 back, right? And that's how investment works, right? You can do that, but not really. So what I recommend is this, right? Rather than doing that and setting your own APR, blah, 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 and all these things, you're actually just spending money out your pocket, right? It's giving it back to the kid. What I recommend is you do this, right? Okay, you create a separate savings accounts for that kid, right? But you can't until they turn 13. So you create it first, and then when they become of age, and you pass it on to their name. For example, so if you're paying that kid like $50 a week, you tell them like, hey, you have to save like around 20% of that money, and it goes into this account. In that account, it earns interest, and this is how it really works. And if you do this job, this happens, blah, 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 and that's how things work. And the reason I actually got this idea, guys, is because I saw a lot of parents, like, the main concern is this, right? We want to make sure that your kid actually grows up with some financial IQ, right? What that means is that your kid actually has some financial background and knows how money works, because a lot of kids, like, they grow up to be like 15, 18, and their kids, and like not their kids, their parents are still like handing them money, like, oh, you want money, here's $10 for the day, here's $5 for the day. And what that kid does is basically just like takes the money and spends it and doesn't really think about anything. But since you parents are probably trying to get this like current card app for this reason, and by the way, I don't recommend the current card, okay? And the reason I don't really even recommend the Greenlight card, although it is a very good alternative, is because you still have to pay for it. Like, I think it's like $4.99 like for the entire family, but it's still $4.99. If you do that for the next like until they turn 13 or until they turn 18, imagine how much money that actually adds up to. So what I recommend is this, right? From the moment that your kid is born, I recommend you put aside $50 into an investment account that will eventually in the future be transferred over to their name once they turn of age. Now, I don't recommend that you guys kind of say this, right? Because a lot of parents actually do this, right? And by the way, guys, I wish my dad or my mom had actually done this, because I would have been like in a whole different level right now, right? I probably will do it for my kids, right? Here's the deal. I don't recommend, some parents out there might say, well, Tommy, I don't want to tell my kid that I'm actually doing this, because then they'll just wait for it and then they just won't even work. That's not the point. The point is that if you raise your kid from a very early age and you teach them finances and you teach them how to save, and they know that at one point, right, they will be contributing also towards that investment account, because every time you give them that $50 a week, you're going to say like, well, I'm taking 20% for the savings. I'm also taking 20% for your investment account. This is how it works. And eventually this will pay for your college, and it will pay for everything. And it will teach that kid patience, right? Which is very key, because you don't want to create a very annoying teenager that only really cares about, well, what can my parent do for me? And by the way, guys, I see a lot of people out there, right, that they have kids, and then when their kids go to like college and stuff like that, they say like, well, they're going to make mistakes. It's not a big deal. Like, they're just growing. It's all good. But in reality, if you can prepare your kid from a very early age so they don't make all those mistakes that follow them around for the rest of their lives, like going to college, right, and getting like around $33,000, which is the average, I think, in student loan debt, will not just be like just a mistake, okay? It will follow them around for a very, very long time. And on top of that, they can't even default on it. So guys, for all the parents out there that are very concerned for their kids and actually wonder about all these things, if you literally save around $200, like I'm gonna re-say it again, if you save around $200 every single month for that kid. And let's do some quick math, right? Because I want to make sure you guys understand that this is possible, right? Because some people might say, Tommy, where the hell am I going to get $200 to actually do this, right? If you're willing to pay, first of all, look at this, $5, right? Because you're going to be paying these apps $5, right? $5, let's say times 12, right? That's $60 a year. And let's say you do it for like 10 years, right? Times 10. Well, that's $600 in fees, right? Which might not seem like a big deal, but it does add up, right? And if you had actually compounded that, then it would have been more money. So for example, if you take $200 a month, you divide it by 30, you only have to save around $6.66 for your kid's future. What this means is that it's probably like a Starbucks coffee. You know, I don't drink coffee, so I don't really know the prices and stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure, like in all those ads when they say like, oh, you can get it for like the price of a coffee, it's not a big deal. Like $6.66, and by the time they reach 18, they will have around $116,000, and that money will produce around $2,932 a year just in dividends. That's around $245 just in interest for that kid. That means by the time they start working, and by the way, guys, there's something else you can actually do, right? Because I don't recommend you have your kids like on allowance for the rest of their lives, right? And I want to make sure you guys understand this. Like, you get them on an allowance, but once they reach like 13 or 14, they can have like a little like part-time little job. They work like 10 hours a week or whatever, and it actually teaches them how to take their money and actually invest it themselves without you actually contributing anything at this point, right? Because you have to teach kids how to be independent themselves, right? And there's actually something else that you can actually do, right? When a kid turns like 14 or 15 and they're actually working, they can actually qualify, and I didn't know this until just now, they can actually qualify for a very special RIA account, which is basically like a retirement account. So it's basically this, right? You can take your kid, create a big nest egg for that kid, right? Because 18 years of compounded money is a very large amount of money, as you can tell, right? On top of that, you can teach them how to, you know, develop these good habits of like, you work, you receive money, but you still have to do things because I am your parent. And then also you can have them like, you know, get a part-time job, you know, have their own job, like buy their own stuff, but also save and invest money. And then once they turn 18, they will have enough. By the way, guys, once your kid turns 18, and you've been doing this since they were 18, guess what happens, right? They will have around 100 times more money than the average American has in a savings account. Because remember this, guys, 69% of Americans don't have more than $1,000 in your savings accounts, and 34% of Americans don't even have any money in their savings account. So think about this, guys. And guys, that's basically what I want to talk about when it comes to the current card app. I didn't want to just talk about like more apps, but I really wanted to give you guys information and how you can actually prepare your kids for like a bunch of this stuff, because a lot of the comments that I got was from parents that was actually concerned about their kids, and this is kind of like the solution. By the way, if you're not a parent and you don't plan on being a parent, you could probably do this for yourself, okay? It makes sense. I'll see you guys next time on the next video. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and like and comment. If you have any questions, any videos you guys want me to do, by the way, guys, don't worry. The green light video is coming, because for those people that still want to get that green light card, I have that video coming, man, because I looked it up and they actually have a very good customer base, and they're actually very good at what they do, and they have a lot of good things going for themselves. They have a very interactive app, so I really like that about them, all right? I'll see you guys next time on the next video, and peace.
You've got to start at the bottom.